To only a few species of bird has been given the gift of soaring flight, the effortless riding of air currents on outstretched whispering wings. Inspired by this true mastery of flight, for centuries man has yearned to climb up into this final element, and only within living memory almost has he succeeded. The soaring birds led him to invent the glider before he could add power to develop the aeroplane. The old-fashioned glider was a clumsy affair, and unless air turbulence was exceptional, it could only lose height from its highest point of launching. Flights were of short duration, sometimes extremely short. Something of the same heavy, rugged construction goes into some of the gliders used for tuition. Built for a specific purpose, such craft are not capable of very high performance. The modern high-performance machine is a very different matter. The degree to which designers have copied the wings of a bird in flight is obvious at a glance. Costing from 1,000 to 3,000 pounds or even more, they owe their performance to specialized designing, extremely lightweight materials, meticulous construction, and workmanship almost as delicate as a watchmaker's. They can be single-seaters or twin-seaters like this graceful craft coming into land. In some parts of the world, such modern craft are called sailplanes. In others, they're still referred to as gliders. Call them what you will, the important thing is their remarkably high performance. In free flight, they're capable of losing as little as 2 feet of height per second in still air, and can therefore rise readily on the slightest up current. And now we would like you to meet René Comte, an ace pilot from Switzerland who has found South Africa a sailplaning paradise. We're going up with René Comte, and pretty high up, so those warm overalls are going to come in handy. An ardent enthusiast, he is going to introduce us to the infinite joys of whispering wings. The power plane will tow us to our initial altitude. A forced landing in an aeroplane with a dead engine to drag it down is a serious matter. For a sailplane, it is infinitely safer. In fact, technically, every sailplane landing is a forced landing, whether on an airfield or not. What danger exists is to be found high up in the clouds, where a parachute might be of some use. An experienced pilot wears one, although he may never use it. It makes a comfortable, as well as a comforting backrest anyway. A sealed clockwork device, known as a barograph, continuously records the altitudes flown on a sheet of paper. It must be carried in contests and record attempts. Now, what does a pilot look for in the way of weather prospects? The answer is cloud. The type of cloud today is called fair weather cloud. Each cloud is sitting on top of a rising column of warm air. That is what forms them. And it is these rising but invisible columns of warm air which are called thermals. Using thermals alone, René Comte has made 2 of the highest sailplane flights in the world, both achieved in South Africa. The highest showed a reading of 36,000 feet, nearly 7 miles above sea level. In America, strong winds directed upwards from mountain ranges have allowed even greater heights to be recorded. But using thermals and thunderclouds alone, the ultimate art of sailplaning, René Comte is a master in international class. For towing off, a ring on one end of the nylon tow rope is attached to the release mechanism and tested. If the release is faulty, it's better to find out on the ground than when you're being dragged around the skies by a power plane. The other end of the tow rope is attached to similar equipment on the power plane. The tow rope can therefore be released from either end. Like all good pilots, René still carries out a final cockpit check to make sure all his controls are working. He prefers taking calculated risks rather than chances. He's going into another world, but not if he can help it into the next world. Finally, he's ready for the takeoff. Close understanding between the two pilots in the power plane and sailplane is essential. The sailplane rolls on its small wheel before becoming airborne, which it does long before the power plane. René Comte retracts his landing wheel as soon as possible to minimize air resistance and cut down drag. From Johannesburg's Baragwanath Aerodrome, the tow plane takes us 1,000 or 2,000 feet above the ground. In certain record attempts, the altitude above sea level at which the glider is released is deducted from the total altitude finally recorded on the barograph. This then confronts the glider pilot with a nice calculation, the precise altitude at which he should release to prevent incurring an unnecessary penalty. This particular flight, though, is not a record attempt, and with Johannesburg and its surrounding gold mine dumps and suburbs below, René Comte still hangs on. While he's being towed through a thermal, he quickly releases. How does he know he's in a thermal? Well, thermals cause the bumps you always feel in an airliner. And so the sailplane starts rising on its own. Meanwhile, the power plane returns to the aerodrome and drops the tow rope before landing. There may be other sailplanes waiting for a tow. In sunny South Africa, there are plenty of thermals, and the experienced pilot has a shrewd idea of where to find them. As a thermal is like a rising column or pipe of warm air, we must circle to remain in it. They come from many different sources, and a city or town is one of them. Its buildings and roofs heated by the sun, and its industries all cause warm air to rise. The art of soaring is not an easy one, and sharing the same enthusiasm, sailplane pilots exchange greetings as they share the supreme exhilaration of well-nigh silent flight. When the upward turbulence grows weak, the pilot must leave it, gradually losing altitude until he glides into another and stronger thermal, where he regains the lost altitude and rises still higher. Having reached the level of the clouds, the experienced pilot must take his courage in both hands and seek another but more violent source of lift, the updrafts which exist in the clouds themselves. This phenomenon is not so strange if one stops to wonder what keeps those heavy rain and hail-laden clouds hanging in the sky in the first place. Actually, the vertical upcurrents in clouds can easily reach a speed of more than 100 miles an hour, a tremendous strain on the structure of a light sailplane. A cotton wool world which belies its internal turbulence and violence. But risks must be taken, among them the hazards of icing up. For today, René Comte is gaining enough altitude to take us on a cross-country flight to meet some of the truly great masters of soaring. Having gained a sufficient margin of safety, René leaves the clouds and strikes out on a 30-mile course practically due north. And so he arrives over the Magaliesberg Range in the vicinity of the Hartbeespoort Dam. And here he has an appointment with nature's outstanding wizards of the Whispering Wings. Launching itself from the mountain face, a lone, venturesome vulture comes spiraling upwards to investigate the silent, bird-like machine René is handling. Round and round we go, riding the same thermal and using the same methods. And soon more vultures are on their way to join the merry-go-round. They seem to regard the sailplane as some giant leader, and René the pupil is studying the masters, watching those outspread wings, the pinions like fingers, delicately feeling the slightest changes of wind and thermal. Up there is a man using skills which have taken mankind centuries to develop. Up there is a man sharing the realm of the great birds around him. A man in a strange and beautiful world of enchantment. And still they come, hideous, ungainly, and rather revolting on the ground, but the very essence of easy grace and gliding brilliance in the air. And here is a latecomer, as eager as the others to become part of this circulating circus. Who knows the motives that prompt these vultures? Do you think it's just idle curiosity? Or do you think perhaps they're gathering on the off chance of René crashing? The great birds streamline themselves to pick up speed and slow down by bringing their legs forward and downward, and at the same time lowering and spreading their tail feathers. These are the techniques mechanically adapted in aircraft too. The whispering wings glide on in a scene of breathtaking perfection, a poem of gentle movement in endless space. But soon, with great reluctance, we must leave, for as the day wanes and the sun weakens, the thermals keeping us aloft are weakening too. Soon the friendly upcurrents will be gone, and we must use those that are left to get us home. But each remaining minute is precious in this eerie yet lovely world. The vultures speed René on his way like a parting guest. Once more he takes his sailplane towards the clouds, gaining altitude and setting course for his 30-mile flight back to Johannesburg. But now the enchantment is replaced with some little anxiety as to whether we shall get back, for even the best of pilots cannot stay up after the thermals have died. The mine dumps on the outskirts of Johannesburg are reassuring, though we still have far to go on those failing upcurrents. Fortunately, the luck holds, and the thermals hold, strongly as you can see by the other craft. And picking out familiar landmarks, René Comte sees his aerodrome below, a welcome sight to any soaring pilot. For had adverse winds sprung up in his absence, he couldn't have got back, and he would have had to force land in a field somewhere, perhaps many miles away. So down goes the landing wheel. Exhilarated by the thrills we have just experienced, thrills which even very few gliding pilots have ever known, René buzzes low over the clubhouse. Then, with the excess speed from the dive, he looks over the landing field before making a full circle for his final approach. And now he can afford to lose the altitude he has nursed so carefully for hour after hour. He'll have much to tell his friends in the clubhouse about his truly remarkable flight. South Africa is great gliding country, in some respects the best in the world. Where else could you enjoy the unique spectacle we have just witnessed? We have indeed been fortunate to share a tremendous thrill with René Comte, to whom many thanks, for he has brought home to us the full fascination of soaring for hours in a silent world, soaring in the world of whispering wings.